The Soulshine movement, I think it maybe can bring people closer together. If they're not religious, then maybe spiritual. Bring more connection to people through the words that David shares, because a lot of the things that he puts up is very uplifting and inspiring. Um, it can be conversations that maybe are the conversations that's going on right now in the world, but also conversations regarding just us as a culture, as people of color, how we can become better, how we can start uplifting each other more in our personal space and also around us. Like, cause if you see, like with other cultures and other religions, they have close bonds, but when it comes to the own African American community, there's so much divide. So I'm hoping that maybe that can be one of the things that can start just through conversation.
Okay. And your name is?
Yolanda, aka Yani.
Hello all, and welcome to another episode of a Soulshine Conversation. I am your host, Mr. Soulshine. So excited to be here, but before we go any further, make sure you guys like, comment, share, and subscribe, please. It says subscribe right there on the bottom. There's a bell next to it. Click it. It keeps you updated with all the soul-inspiring information that we have going on for you. So we are really excited to be back here at Uncle Bobby's. Our owner, Mr. Mark Lamont Hill, we thank you for this space again. And I'm here with some returning, beautiful, handsome faces. And I've got a ton of new faces. So welcome, guys. I'm excited to have you here. So listen, as I was preparing for today, I really thought about, I feel like we're in like a relationship series. Because like our first question, the first episode, we talked about marriage. Like how long do you wait before you make that transition or you take that big leap? Is it 10 years, 7 years? We referenced some Love and Hip Hop people as well. And then our last episode, we talked about dating. And so we kind of always ask these questions around how long do you do something. So I gave some data. And we talked about, I think it was the average that, you know, people felt 6 dates was enough before you become monogamous, or that's your person, you guys want to make it work, so forth and so on. So I thought we'd stay in that sort of vein today around relationships. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of backstory because, you know, I live for backstory. And I give you a little bit of information that I found. And then I'm going to ask the question around, are you ready? So I found some research that says between 28 and 32 is actually the prime time to get married, which I'm a little bit older than that. So not sure, but they say that's the best time to get married. So I thought, in the vein of keeping with relationship series, our question today is, are you ready? Are you ready to be a husband? And are you ready to be a wife? And if so, why? How? Tell us. Talk to us. So are you ready? Are you ready to be a husband and a wife? Please.
When I got married, I was very much in love with the woman that I was with, and I proposed to her in England on the River Thames and had the ring and everything ready before we went to London and stuff. So you know when you're ready. You know when you are in love with a person so much that you don't care about anyone else. You don't care what anyone else thinks, and so that's, you'll know. It's an intrinsic thing.
Okay.
So my situation though, right now, got my kids. They're beautiful, growing up. I love them. I don't really see myself getting married again.
Okay.
So on the other side of already being married, no, I'm not ready.
Got it. Okay, no worries. So how about somebody who's not married yet?
A couple months I will be.
Yes.
But so me and my significant other, we've been dating since like high school basically. So I always told him like, oh, nothing before 25. But now it's come, and I'm hoping that he is building up towards that.
Okay.
Because in a little while then I'm ready for kids. And, you know, women kind of have like a biological clock going in the back of their mind all the time. Like, so I feel like I'm not exactly ready for the marriage part yet, maybe because I want to explore a little more on my own, like just like get my finances prepared. I want to live a little longer by myself, and he's kind of doing the same thing. I mean, I know we're on the path towards marriage, but
Have you guys had that? You've had that conversation about marriage. How long have you guys been together? Do you mind me asking?
9 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so 9 years.
Okay.
How old is he?
He's same age. Same age. So we've had that conversation. And I just asked him recently, I'm like, so, you know, when do you see yourself having kids? Like us having kids? He's like, 2-3 years. And I'm like, oh, whoa, buddy, where's the ring? I'm like, because, you know, I want to have my newlywed time with him. Like, you know, it's a relationship. I feel like when I'm in my marriage, I want to know that my significant other, like, we're here, like, we're first. Because without us, then the family kind of, like, just crumbles. So I want to make sure that that's strong, so then we can focus in on, like, our family and kids. So, you know, I'm saying I'm not completely ready for marriage. But then again, I feel like you never are, because it's growth. Marriage is growth, and that's the process of it all. So, you know, I'm just...
And that was my thought.
Yeah, that
Is that when you talk about what's the right age, what's the right time, it's really not so cookie cutter. There is no there's no definitive right age, right time, and you're never really ready.
Yeah.
Just like anything else in life, motherhood, or, you know, it's not something that you can, it's not a book, there's no manual that's gonna tell you how to get through it, or how it's gonna end, or how it's gonna turn out. Our two have been previously married, and I'm in my second, like, long-term relationship. So, it's really kind of just another leap of faith. You have to have the foundation of respect with the person that you're with, mutual understandings about the pillars, which are those things that are most important. You know, where do you stand on family and maybe religion and things of that nature, and finances. But other than that, you really can't say, oh, I can only get married at 24 or 25. It's not so simple. Like, if you love somebody enough to say, this is who I'm sure I want to build a life with, then I feel like that's enough to build one, to grow one. Because it's all a journey. You're gonna go, you have to be willing to grow with that person.
Do you think your person that you're with now, I mean, you married previously, you guys are in long term now, do you see yourselves, are you ready, like, to take that step with him?
I mean, I definitely would. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really focused on that. I'm more focused on just being happy, which I am. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important, because I was in a marriage and I wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. So I guess me being happy now is more of a value to me than the actual being married.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I don't want to be a wife.
Okay. Tell us.
Tell us.
Growing up, I think probably like very young, I was thinking, you know, yes, white dress and all these things. But as I grew as a person, an artist person first, the artist life just didn't, in my mind, didn't put together that, oh, then you get married. And also, I just feel like love is most important. I've been with my guy 13 years now. October 5th was our 13th anniversary. When I met him, I was 27. We have a 13-year gap, which was necessary, because I'm kooky. I'm somebody to know. Like, in terms of like being in a relationship, like, I'm mature, but like not really.
She's not lying.
I'm not lying. So having someone older who knew more about life and like could teach me things and how to like help me develop things about myself, even as an artist, that were lacking, has been beneficial. He has been married before. I've never wanted to be married, and when we started dating, we were talking about marriage and kids and things, and I actually never really wanted children either. But then when I met him, I was like, ooh, I should have a kid. And then like, yeah, no, okay. And not because I don't love him and I wouldn't want to experience that with him, but like, we're good, like, together. And you see him go, like, I can feel myself, like, it's just really good. And it's not that like all of the years have been perfect, but he just loves me so completely. And I'm able to love myself even more completely and then give that love to other people. I am happy. I'm at peace. He dug deep. I don't like telling like stuff about my like past, but he was like, so like, what was your childhood like? Who are your parents? Like, do you get along with your family? Like all of these things, and just wanting to know the inner parts of me was a different kind of love that I'd never experienced before. And it just makes me feel like floaty, you know? So our souls are married. If we ever decided to have a child, we did just discuss how like in hospitals, like they won't let you see like people who are sick and yada yada, X, Y, and Z. Although things may be a little bit different now. But our souls are married. Like I can't see myself without him and vice versa. And again, to reiterate, 13 years is a long time and every year has not been perfect. But I can't see myself not with him. And waking up and being like, oh hey, you know, or what's up, CB? And then him be like, all right, Jones. Like, you know, just kind of, just that thing that we have. And I don't know, like, I don't think that traditional marriage is for everyone, but I do know that the Creator and the universe want you to be loved and for you to show love and to give love to others. And when you're willing to receive it, then there will be a balance. And whether that's with rings, whether that's just with souls, whether that's with you both have health insurance together because you are what is it called, common law together, like whatever it is, it should just bring joy to you. And I think that that's most important. I've known people who've been married for decades and they hate each other.
Absolutely. Come on, that's a whole other conversation. Yes.
And they're still together because of history.
Right.
And history doesn't
But all you have is all those years versus.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the show right there. We might as well.
So great point, Shakira. Really, really great point there. So I think there's still more dialogue around, you know, being ready for husband, if that's a word, I'm gonna get this, and to be a wife. But I thought let's talk a little bit about. You mentioned traditional marriage, and so I know you guys talked before about being married, and I would think it was traditional. I'm not sure. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But let's talk a little bit about traditional marriage. And you know, I also thought about what we talked about before around society, because I think a lot of times society puts a lot of pressure on us around to be married. I think you know, I talked about clock ticking, so forth and so on. So I think there's some good dialogue around that. So first, you know, traditional marriage. What is traditional marriage? Why do we like it? Why don't we like it?
Society tells us a lot of things, right?
They do.
Yes, a lot of things. But we've been conditioned from childhood to say, this is what it's like to grow up. Including, they told us that if you went to college, then you could get a good job, right? So, but maybe that's another question.
That's another thing. Yes. Oh, yes.
That's also what society told us.
Yeah.
But what's more important is that, as it relates to this, is that society says that women are supposed to be this helpmate, and women are supposed to be this, and men are supposed to be the men of the house, and they're supposed to take care of all of these things. And then after you've gone to school, then theoretically you're supposed to find a person out of all of the people in the world, and you're going to find this one person, and they're going to be your soulmate, and you're going to be with them forever. But society does not account for kind of what Shakira was pointing out, which was there are people that have been married for years and they hate each other. They're miserable. I'm staying together for the kids. But the kids know you hate them. The kids know, right? And so oftentimes we don't really know what a traditional marriage is, because there's TV marriage, and then there's the people next door, and then there's the people that we actually grew up with. And a lot of people also did not grow up in a home where there was a married mother and father. And so whether maybe the father and or mother was not there and or was there, do people really know what a traditional marriage is? And maybe in these times that we're in now, we're just questioning what we are considering normal. And so as we question our normalcy, then we can really get into these discussions to truly determine what is normal, what is tradition, and maybe it's just this myth that doesn't exist.
I agree. I think it is a myth, honestly. As an openly gay man, marriage was not even a conversation in my household. It was either you learn how to date a girl or whatever else, punishment came with it, right? And so marriage and what that looked like for me as a gay man and a gay black man has only really come to fruition sort of recently here, right? And so I had to learn how to even date a man, right? And no one talks about love maturity and what that may look like for a person. And the other thing I find very interesting is this idea that you have to be sort of connected to one person for so long, right? And no one accounts the development of the brain, right? And what it is that you liked at 18 is going to be different at 25, it's going to be different at 35, it's going to be different at 50. So the idea that I'm going to like you that long is sort of an assumption, right? And so there's like a lot of compounding things. So traditional marriage now, and I'm a Game of Thrones watcher. I'm not sure if people in the room watch Game of Thrones, but I do. But the thing about Game of Thrones that I find very interesting is that they take how we celebrate marriage now and the way we do this whole ceremony, and they explain it as to why women never really had a voice in the first place, right? It's the reason why the groom goes and asks the father for permission. Why? Because women were not allowed to pick their mates, right? If depending on how much money you had was how you went to go ask the father of the other family. And then if that father said yes, then you were marrying that man. And so sure, yeah, this idea of traditional marriage, what is traditional? And then what did that then look like in the black church, right? And then sort of those assumptions and all of those things compounded as to not even thinking about how people just connect with each other, right? And to Shakira's point earlier about just being connected. I do think that this idea of the traditional marriage came from white people. I really do. And I think that in which the Europeans, in the way that they sort of decided that this was how they were going to present this idea, this institution of marriage, and still never gave women a voice. And I have my own thoughts about white women, and Shakira and I, we talk about that very, very intentionally there, but and maybe that's a different conversation, but I do think that it is a myth. And then not everybody is considered in this idea of traditional marriage.
Traditions are going to change, and the way that people view history and what is important in time is going to change. With a lot of people, there's a fear with marriage too, when you get divorced. Like, my divorce was easy. I didn't have anything. So we got divorced. It was like, all right, wish it would have worked out, you know. With a lot of people, the whole prenup thing, common law marriage they have is that in Pennsylvania as well? Because I know it's in California. Living with somebody for a long period of time and then losing half your stuff. Things like that. It's like some weird consequence to trying to find love and it not working out. So with a lot of people, it's like, why go through all of that? And then if I am in a common law state, it's like, bye-bye, I'll see you. You know, we'll come back in a few months and then we'll do this again or something. I don't know. I haven't been with anybody that long for them to be able to bounce from me and be like, yo, I gave you half my life, I want you half your stuff. But I think another thing is women do get the short end of the stick with a lot of stuff. Big up to Half the Sky, if anybody saw that movie. Also a movie about how women are totally getting shitted on. Okay. So the heavy thing about that is you lose your name. I can't trace who your family is through you. That's why I'm always a fan of women who like hyphenate and whatnot. That's dope. Like, do that. It's a crazy thing. The whole marriage thing is crazy. And what
to say that marriage is beautiful, and not necessarily to be like the advocate of a devil or an evil power or whatever. The opposite. To me, balance is power, and quite often I'm a single, happy man. Period. Right? I'm very single, and I think I've talked about it during like quite a few episodes. Right? Being single and finding your happiness and all this other stuff and all that, whatever. But I think that, when we think about the institution of marriage, you have to kind of consider some of the cultural factors and some of the reasons why folks got married. We're married, folks have been married to empower not only themselves, but their union, their families, and raising, their village, their community, whatever. These are things that help out generations, they help out families, and they just kind of help us. They're supportive. So the other sort of aspect of marriage to me is not necessarily just, you know, whether you're happy emotionally or someone is getting along with you or blah, blah, blah. You know, you have to think about sort of sustainability and your lineage and what you're leaving, you know, the earth, you know, or in the world, so to speak. This is coming from a single person who has never been married, you know, and who is not influenced by the concept of marriage at all. I don't think that I'm going to be married, but, you know, you never know. Next week it might be a different story. I don't care, but
Anything's possible.
yeah, you know, and I mean, like I said, I mean, I just think that, you know, those are things to take into consideration. And, you know, there was some mention about, you know, sort of white people creating this concept of it. I don't think that that's true either. You know, I think that, you know, white people have co-opted certain ideas, and we've, you know, believed the hype that, you know, it was created. But I think that based on that creation of marriage, sometimes we do believe the hype, and we believe in the fantasy of marriage, you know, that it's going to be a perfect union and that sort of thing. You know, I think that, you know, melanin-rich people today can really kind of learn about, you know, of not only themselves, but about sustaining who we are and where we are in society and in the world, you know, through coupling, whether it's a traditional type marriage, you know, whether it's a union, you know, you see folks getting married to 2 and 3 and 4 people and more, you know, which is something that, you know, people cringed about early in the day. I love it, you know, I'm more open to that concept than others, but anyway, I'm getting my business. But anyway, whatever, anyway, the point is this, I just think that, you know, it's something that could probably help us throughout society. I mean, we know sort of the precarious situation that many of us are in, you know, whether, you know, we're women, whether we're men, you know, whether we're talking about issues around justice, around health and wellness, education, all these sorts of things that are problematic for us. I think that successfully sort of delving into and working on that balance, you know, in coupling. I'm just going to call it coupling, because marriage is, you know, it's like a default thought in our head when we think about that one-on-one, but, you know, I think that there could be ways to support each other as well. So, and again, I'm single and I'm happy that I don't plan on getting married, but I think that the concept of it is a great concept for people who can deal with that and can cultivate a relationship, you know, with someone else and grow there, you know.
You know, in some of my notes I have here, you know, I think sometimes people get caught up in the idea of like, oh, I want this beautiful day, so, which is fine to do, but it's, you know, what do you do afterwards? 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months into it. I just had a friend of mine who celebrated maybe 5 years of marriage, but she said, you know, their first year was the hardest. And I think it stemmed from the growth. I think Noah talked about learning each other, you know, spending lots of time in a similar space, and that tends to be a hard time for them. So I think that, you know, people sometimes get caught up in the idea of things versus like what it is afterwards and the work. Laura, you're gonna say something? I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I was brought up in a very traditional home.
Yes.
So my parents are still together. And going on 47,
Wow.
47 years. And so we were churched, and you know,
The church.
we know
Come on.
sex before marriage.
Yeah.
None. And you were to be married. And the pressure, I did not realize the pressure I was under until I started getting a little older. I'm a woman of a certain age. And that pressure was so, I don't hear a lot of you young ladies with this pressure, so that's wonderful, because it really would have produced a marriage that I don't believe would have worked, because it was for the wrong things. What I see now is that you have to be true to yourself. I was true to my religion, what I thought was right. And I was very conflicted, very, very conflicted. So when I stepped out of the church, and not that the church is a bad thing, that was my path. I needed to come out and I need to see some things. Now I'm stepping back in a little bit, but on my terms, and I'm in line. I feel very good about that. Now I go when I like to go. As I did that, I was able to get rid of that incongruency in my life. I gotta be married. I gotta be married. Well, no, you don't. And now I'm okay with not being married. I'm okay, but it was a path. It was about a 10-year path, 10 plus year path to get that out of my mind and know that I am good without it. It does not make me, I make it. It does not come, I like a man, sure, but I have to be I have to be 100%. And a man comes along and he's the icing, he's the sweetness. He's a little, he's added on to my 100 because I'm all of that. And in addition to, now I can bring 100% to the relationship because I'm not lacking and pulling on him to be something that I'm not. I have to be the whole person. And that's a part of religion that I guess it's not really taught. Marriage is taught, but we have to be whole first. And marriage is not the end all be all. It's not the end. It's like the beginning. I mean, I think if I would have got married at 20, Lord Jesus, that poor man would be crazy. I would have drove him straight crazy. I know it. And he probably would have drove me crazy too. So, you know what I mean? And as I step back, I've been able to see friends in 2 and 3 marriages. Not happy. So then it just taught me to believe.
You know, I've been called many things, but the icing and sweetness. That's a good one right there. You know, and one thing I think to take into consideration, everything you said, it was deep, right? Very, very profound. And one thing that I didn't necessarily take into consideration growing up was just sort of the societal and religious and, and familial pressures around gender in marriage. The pressures even, through about gender. I think that, and then another thing, as an artist, and right, I see, and I don't know if it's an artist thing because we're in our own world or whatever that sort of, conversation is. But, I play at about between 40 and 60 weddings per year. I've played at similar folks' weddings, maybe 2-3 times throughout the years of playing, And the idea is that, we talk about these models and things, and, I don't think I've been to, I'm lying, I've been to one wedding that kind of inspired me a little bit, and then I lost it after the, there was a cocktail hour. but I mean, hey, those things are important, but thank you for bringing that up.
What I am ready for though, I'm ready for the finance and the business implications of marriage.
Right.
And so we talked a little bit about inheritance. We talked about what are we leaving for our kids. I'm talking about I need some tax breaks for that married filing jointly. Like I want that. And exactly. But our new taxes are different. That's true. However, there's a lot that goes into being able to share the expenses of the household, which some people are doing. I decided for myself that I would not live with the person if I were not married to them. And so for me, I will not be able to share expenses unless the person decides to give me things, which is definitely welcome. So that we're clear. However, that means that I will not be able to even reap those benefits until I enter into a marriage of some sort, whatever that looks like. Being able to pull finances together to do different things as a couple. And so that might mean making investments, that might mean investing in different types of bonds and businesses and growing businesses together and doing all of these different things. I want to be able to do that with a helpmate. And so
that's why it's important to be equally yoked, because when you're not, it doesn't work.
So a marriage is a business arrangement, and I think the Caucasians, they understand that a lot more than we do, because you see them, they're in marriages and they hardly ever divorce because they have so many assets that they've acquired and they get it. It's a business and all that good stuff. That's one thing about, us. We don't get it as much as they do, but, you can kind of take the framework and do what you want with it, but
At the end of the day, it's a business arrangement. And back to what she said with tax implications and whatnot, you know, why not?
So, but the last 3 murders that I've heard, that was like your husband killing the wife. Was that a hostile takeover? They may not leave the marriage, but they will kill it.
I'm not saying
a business implication.
I'm not saying they're happy. I'm not saying they're happy. I'm not saying they're happy at all. But they get the business side. It's just a business.
But the murders.
Hey man, you look. Like you said, right? Like somebody else said, like you said about the 80-year-olds cussing each other out in the laundry, man. I get it.
Yeah.
But it's hard to be happy with somebody for that long.
So, just listening to you, it takes me back to episode 2, where we discuss at what point in your relationship do you have the conversation that we aren't on the same page?
It took a year.
And so my question would be, and this is for anybody, and if you want to answer it as well, do you wait till year 1 to discuss it, or do you have a 30-day conversation, a 60-day? Because looking in on this, and this is just me looking at, right? I'm gonna communicate. I'm gonna tell you how I feel. If I come in the house, I had a bad day, I'm gonna tell you. If I don't like the way you cut your hair, I'm gonna tell you. So do you wait the year to have that conversation, or do you have it 30, 60, and then you decided that year, like, you know, maybe we are 5 years apart and where we want to go with our lives. That's my question.
They say that, so I've heard people say that, you know, before you end a relationship, you know 2-3 months before it's actually over, before you say something. Like I talked to a friend of mine who had been divorced, and she said, I was a single married woman for about a year because mentally she already knew it was over. They just had to have that sort of conversation. So I've heard that sort of thing where it takes a time emotionally, I guess, to get to a place where you have to have that conversation with your significant other and say like, hey, something just isn't working. You know, I just personally am not a fan, and I've shared this on all of the episodes so far. I always tell a story about a friend of mine whose parents divorced, again, from the church, like they were together for, let's say, 20 plus years. But when they divorced, you know, she cried and she said, I'm crying tears of joy though for my mom because her mom had shared with her that she wasn't happy for 15 years. And so, we were teenagers then, but I always remember that, you know, as like, I just don't want to be, I don't want to be happy for 5 years, 2 years, like I just don't want to do it. And 15 years in, you know, of just sadness and unhappy, but you know, it's kids, there's marriage, there's religion, there's all these things compounded on top of it. It's just not something that I personally, for me, am interested in doing. And I think as I hear us talk, you know, we are in different places than our parents and grandparents, just from multiple levels, from religion, from society, from just the way they were raised as well. Like, we are more of in a choice where we're just not going to do it. Like, I am just choosing, one, I don't have 15 years to be unhappy, like I'm just saying. So, but I don't have that sort of time. But I just don't want to do it, so that's where we have these, you know, sort of conversations as well. Shar, you had said something earlier about, like, when Rob was speaking, you said, is it men versus just that person?
I think biologically, men just, their eyes just wander.
Girl, my eyes wander. I've been together with them for a long time. People are beautiful.
They really are.
Yes.
Especially deeply melanated men. I be like, look at you, melanin happening. Oh my God, look at you.
Right.
To say that, I'm not gonna lie. I've been with the person I'm with, and we'll be out somewhere, and I'll be like, oh, look at her booty. You like that, don't you? But that's the level that's where we're at. Like, I'm not gonna fool myself to make myself believe you don't notice this booty because I noticed it.
Right.
Yes.
I will point it out. I will point it out to make him
and we gonna sit here, we can talk about it for a minute and then move on. And then we can go ahead and do what we do. That's how you gotta be with the person that's how you gotta be. I'm with my best friend when I'm out with that man.
Well,
And guess what? And I'm gonna talk to him that way.
Yep.
You better talk.
I mean, my parents, they were together for like 30 plus years before my dad passed. And like, as a kid, my mom would be like, oh yeah, I see your eyes. But like, she would be joking in with them. So like, growing up, I'm like, you know, it's gonna happen. But what my significant other told me, it always stuck with, he's like, everyone has temptation.
Everyone.
It's about self-control.
Yes.
And like, if you, like, it's about you. So like, self-discipline. I mean, like you said, if you're not gonna, if you know, like, oh, you're easily dazzled by someone, and you gotta know yourself, you know you shouldn't be in a monogamous relationship, then, you know, don't do it. And then also I wanted to touch on, just I'm kind of rewinding, is kind of like what you said, and also you two said about business, like traditional marriage. It was initially a business. Like you got married to, you're gonna be a wife, oh yeah, you came to my dad, okay, you're gonna be a wife, you paid this, you're gonna work the household, and I'm gonna run this business. You raise the kids, you clean up, you do everything, and then we pass it down to the next generation. And I feel like it's kind of new with all this choice. Like now marriage is based on who I love, who I want to be with. And so now it's kind of new to us to be like, well, we have this choice, we can get divorced. It's not about always being a business. So we're now in this kind of weird stage, you know, especially with millennials, we're like, oh, everything is a choice, everything, like we need all this.
What was that?
Tradition
Yeah.
versus the two people in the relationship defining it for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Not
now
all of this other people
that's
that
what I'm
don't
saying.
that you don't even know.
it's coming out to something new than what it was traditionally of being just a business, and I feel like now everyone's trying to figure it out, and it's like awkward. Like you're like, when do we communicate about this? And it's like, well, these are kind of new topics because people would stay in this partnership, this business partnership for the family, for the business, for tradition's sake.
Religion.
And so, yeah, religion. And so it's like, now we're like, okay, we don't really have to worry too much about this. Now we're kind of like focusing on like our love and our happiness in ourselves. And it's not so much about breaking the community if we break up as well. It's like breaking ourselves. Like, so.
It's
I feel
also
like,
not the judgment.
Yeah, you're not judged as
Mrs.
harshly.
Brothers here, you know, an openly gay man,
Yeah.
openly gay black men, that was a taboo thing for a long time. Less than openly gay black women, you know, because man's world,
Yeah.
right? And men thinking that they're gonna be included in that somehow. But the heavy thing about it is the judgment. When the judgment leaves, you have more freedom. But another thing that's funny about marriage, sometimes you said something about she's gonna handle this and he's gonna handle that. I've worked in customer service before, and it's always a heavy thing when you talk to somebody whose husband isn't around or whose wife isn't around, and they don't handle what they handle, so they can't talk to you about anything. And I'm like, have you lost yourself?
Right.
Like, how do you not know how to have, you don't know about your bills because she handles the bills, so you don't know about the bills, so you can't talk to me about this one thing? That is insane.
That's what he had.
To me, that's insane. To lose yourself when you could have, you should have been a function, to me, because you should have been a functioning human being, a whole, like you said, a whole person who can handle his own business and whatnot. This person, yes, they may handle it, but you should still know how to.
And I hear what you're saying, but what about those people who live at home and they never lived on their own until they got married?
Yes.
So they never functioned as an independent or as an adult. So they went from mommy and daddy taking care of them to the next daddy taking
I
care
call
of
that
them.
being malnourished.
And that's why, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I totally hear you, but there are people, probably more than we would count, that are out there that are like that just believe that they're supposed to go from their parents to their husband.
That's how it's disadvantage.
But not only is it a disadvantage, but it's a learned and taught behavior. I grew up with just me and my mom. My parents divorced when I was 7. My dad is my everything. Like, no matter how many times he said he was gonna come and didn't come, I was like, all right, like, that's my dad. So, like he's the reason why I love my last name so much. Because you're a Jones and you will represent the family accordingly. And you will. But them getting divorced and just growing up with my mom and her teaching me how to do everything and telling me that I didn't need anybody to take care of me. You can do it. You can do the baseboards and, and figure out how to balance this checkbook sheet. But that's what her mom did for her. So being in this relationship was very, very difficult initially to be like, you're going, like, we going Dutch, like, I got this, like, or you have some, it's learned. So there are some behaviors that you have to unlearn so that you can kind of get to know yourself better and allow another person to get to know you, and so you'll be open to getting to know them. However, there's this weird teaching of our girls and our guys and our boys and our girls that they have to go this particular direction in their roles. I also work with children. I love our kids so much, but I can say to one of my girls, hey boo, like, can you just pick that up for me? Thank you for helping me. I'll say to one of my gentlemen, you know, because I'm trying to teach them to be a gentleman, I'm a lady. You know, like, hey, could you help me that? I didn't do it. Yeah, babe, I know you didn't do it, but I'm just asking. So, like, just like the gentlemanly things, like, you don't ever have to get married. Like, that's fine. But if you could just be a gentleman, like, allowing the lady to go first. And even I tell my young ladies, you know, let the guys go first because you guys went first last time. Like, just balance.
But no, I was going to say, but even speaking culturally, gentility, now that is a European sort of thing. And I'm not saying that, you know, men shouldn't do some of the things that, you know, require maybe more physical things if, you know, if you're more physically, you know, enough to do it and all of that sort of thing. But I mean, whatever. But that is something that is cultural as well, and we've kind of believed the hype about that and sort of adjusted and adapted that to the ways in which we kind of, but and I also just think that, you know, the whole marriage piece, you know, we need like a checklist, you know. I feel like, you know, it's like a checklist of things that you have to have, you know. I think the confusion comes in also because based on what you said, you know, talking about building that camaraderie with you know, with one another. I think that something else that is interesting, even before you get to marriage and even maybe after marriage, right, that, you know, other folks who you are interested in or who you are building a relationship with start to suffer from some of these hidden vestiges of like the residuals of your old relationships, and that pisses me off. Listening to a song and a song come on, and you're like, turn it off. We got the, that remind me, well, I don't care, listen.
We together.
To the song. Now I understand your emotional attachment, and I understand, but guess what? Like, don't give me all that. You know? You're supposed to work like this is going judge or paying for things, or, you know, you used to having this done for you and all of that. It's about kind of working it out, but that pisses me off. It's like, really?
But that's because they have not unpacked.
Correct.
They have not unpacked. They have not healed. And they have not actually come to terms with what has happened. And I think that's all part of the growth. Like, you know, you need to be able to say, yo, I fucked that relationship up. You know what I mean? Like, or vice versa. And people don't do that. They don't own it. They don't own their mess. Whatever it is.
It's yes. People don't own their mess.
Come on.
And one thing that I find incredibly fascinating is the way in which we assume that everybody comes from the same world. Right? We live on one earth. My friends hear me say this all the time, but we live on one earth, but there's 7.1 different worlds. Right? So you have a world, you have a world, you have a world, you have a world, and then so when our worlds collide, we're trying to like pack up all the things from all the world that we came with and expecting that person to just know.
But millennials are waiting later now to get married, which is the reason why the divorce rate has gone down. People were marrying more in the 1960s. But when I look at my grandparents, they're miserable. And they've been married for 50-something years. I'm like, why didn't you just leave? I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. It's like, how do you stay like this forever?
They were taught that there was nothing else.
You I know, but it's just like crazy to me.
There's this idea now that we have more access to more people.
This is true.
Which is different than our grandparents had, right? So it was like, you know, my grandmother only had the 3 to 13 men that was in her radius, but now we have access. But now and to your point about millennials, they have more access to more people, and they
But
feel
that's a bad thing too.
It is
Then
bad.
you're
I
looking
agree.
for perfection.
Correct.
When you're going on Tinder,
Absolutely.
when you're going on Tinder and they do something you don't like, you're like, on to the next.
Correct.
On to the
Correct.
next. On to the next.
Now.
And so it's like, you're not gonna find a person that is 100%. It's compromise, you gotta give and take here. So it's just a little, dating is just a little different.
At what point were we supposed to learn these things?
Right?
And so, you know, and that's the point, is that we often try to hold people accountable for their emotional stability. However, there is not really one point in time, depending upon the background that you have, your family history, even have you ever been to a therapist history type of thing, right? But not being Joe about it. It's more along the lines of, at what point of time were people supposed to learn how to unpack? That's not something that we talk about in the household, especially when you talk about people of color, right?
Taboo.
And
Very
so
taboo.
things are taboo. If such and such touched you, you don't talk about it, right? If somebody touched you emotionally wrong, you don't talk about it. Parents are in the household. They're teaching different types of things, but what they're not teaching is how to communicate appropriately and how to be emotionally independent and emotionally stable people. And so when were you supposed to learn that? But we expect other people to come in without this baggage, me included. And so
To that point,
That's why we're having Soulshine Conversations.
yeah, so to that point, you know, we have years and years of trauma going all the way back to the slavery days. So we've had to heal, yeah, no doubt about that, but we had to heal from years and years ago, and we never, you know, we're not in.
We've been having such great dialogue, and as always, we ask one question and we go into 10 million different places, but that's what it's about because that's a Soulshine Conversation. They are organic, which is great. So I want to loop us back in before we wrap for the day and really talk about, you know, our original question was, are you ready to be a husband and are you ready to be a wife? I know that, you know, in the beginning, Noella kind of talked about where she is as a little bit of a younger person than some of us that are here. So as I heard us talk about traditional marriage and I don't desire to do these certain things and I was married and so forth and so on, right now, for yourself, whether you want to go into a union, whether you want to go into, you know, you've been in your 9 relationships, so forth and so on, you want to move forward, are you ready? So do you think right now, you sitting here today, are you ready to be a wife and are you ready to be a husband? Whether it's traditional or whatever you want to think, if it's for you want to be a partnership, do you think you're ready to be that person?
I'm ready to be wild first.
I'm sorry, go.
I'm ready to be wild at first.
Okay.
Wow me into being into a relationship with you and then possibly marriage. Don't, you know, just go from 0 to 60. I think it needs to be progression, and 9 times out of 10, that's where things get misconstrued, I think.
maybe
Like,
we're not answering the question.
yeah, I'm not.
I'm
Let me tell you why I'm not. Because I'm not wild. No
So
one
say
has
the
wowed
answer
me.
is no. You're not.
I said what I heard. And I'm not.
Yes.
No, but no.
Oh, okay, I'm ready. But to be honest, I just became ready. I was not ready before.
This
and
conversation.
recently. Well, just conversation. In the last year, and maybe the last 2 months, I would say
Yeah.
I can say that I'm ready because I've taken responsibility for some things. And I took responsibility of the things that I did, and not just, you did this to me, I didn't like you for doing that. No, it started with me, and it ends with me. So I could say now, I can happily go into a relationship, a partnership, a marriage.
Amen.
I would say yes. For me, the answer is yes, because I had my own self things that I wanted to check off, right? So for me, I feel like I have accomplished those things. So now I'm like, as you call it, the business. Let's move to the business aspect and have a partner, and then let's replicate it, what I've done, you know, by myself, and do it with a partner. So I would say yes. If you're listening back.
Replay that one. She's ready to do it. Yes. Anyone else ready to be a husband?
I would say,
Come on, she's ready. Welcome.
Chatty Cathy.
I personally am not ready. As you know, I'm recently divorced. So that was just, you know, it was a really hard marriage. And I'm not ready to cede control to anyone else. And it's not just like he's controlling me, but I don't want to share responsibilities with anyone. I have 2 kids, and I've gotten to a point where I'm comfortable making all the decisions. And so once I get married, it's a partnership. It's a joint, we're gonna make joint decisions. And I'm a traditional marriage person, so the husband does kind of make the final decision. And so that's not something that I want to relinquish control of. So personally, I don't see marriage anytime soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you talked a little bit about, I don't want to take us too off topic, but you talked about the being that traditional and the man kind of taking the lead. I think last time we talked about, I think it was Brian who was here, talked about the submissive. You know, so and traditionally as a woman, like that's what happens. And I think about my parents, you know, I grew up in a very traditional, the church, you know, relationship. And my mom is a firecracker. Like she's a very strong woman, and she talks a lot about how she had to really bridle her own tongue in the beginning with my dad, because she was ready to be like, no, somebody said something, let's go. You know, and my dad was very, very, very calm. He's the original Soulshine. So the original, like very calm. Yes. And so he's the OG. So she struggled with that in the beginning, you know, but she talks a bit about, and then coming into the church and so forth and so on. So it was a bit of a submission, and you know, that she had to do in order to have this relationship work, you know, for her. So.
But it worked because he was a leader.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, my dad taught you guys. I mean, I talk about him all the time. Like he's been going for 12 years now. But my dad taught my brother and I, you know, what it is to be a man and to lead a family and to do all the things. So that's
you can't be relinquishing rights to somebody that's going to have you all willy nilly in the back street.
Amen.
You have to be a leader.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you the lead if you looking like a chicken with your head cut off. I'm just not doing it.
And the thing is, the person who, if the gentleman, if the man, has a way, what do they call it, je ne sais quoi? He has like this thing. It like, because I am an alpha person. Like that's who I am. That's how I was raised. But like chilling with my guy, like I was like, I'm gonna sit right here and I'm gonna just be a lady. Like, and it just comes naturally. It's not something you have to force yourself into, which is why I don't prefer the word submissive. Because I feel like I'm giving up things that I shouldn't have to give up, which is an issue, you know, because I'm a control person. A whole nother conversation. But when the person just shows you that they're responsible and they make like quality decisions, you're just like, okay, cool.
You can relax.
You can relax. Because if anybody, any young lady or guy in here was raised like by a person who is an alpha male or an alpha female, like you're just like, oh, I could do it. I'm not asking you for no help. I could do it. And not because you don't want them to help you, but it's just ingrained. But when you see that someone genuinely wants to help you, then you're just like, okay, I can chill. And it's easy.
Well, there's that trust that you talked about.
Trust, yep.
And you do bring to light that some people are doing it right. And so we've spent a lot of time talking today about what's not working and the negative components associated with being married and being in a relationship and such. But some people are in very fruitful relationships, right? And whatever types of ships they call them, whether it's a marriage, whether it's coupling, or whatever it is that they put their title on, some people are having a wonderful time in these relationships.
Can I speak on that? Like,
Please.
I always had a very positive view on marriage because of my parents. Like, they had a very loving, caring marriage. They would go out to dates. They would always be laughing with each other, jokingly. You know, it would be some arguments, but it wasn't anything we heard like blood screeching. It's like, you idiot, you did this today, blah, blah. Like, it was just kind of, it was like they communicated, like, and they showed they were still having fun and still dating and still like open with us, like, especially my mom. She was a little too open sometimes. But yeah, like so I always had a very positive outlook and view on marriage. So that's why I'm. You know.
That's a great point that you bring up. So I was raised by a very strong alpha woman. Her name is Delphine.
Delphine.
Right.
That sounds strong.
She's a very, you don't need nobody type of woman, right? And growing up with her, I didn't meet my father until I was 22, and I had to ask her again for an opportunity to give me some information, right? Because what my mom told me and my sister is like, you gonna figure it out, because one day you're gonna be out here by yourself, and I don't want you to have to go through what I went through with men, right? Like putting all this trust in men and hoping that I'm gonna be the good partner. And I've seen lots of good men come in my mom's house, and then those same good men leave. So I do think that it is something to be said about what you see. Not to say that this is the say all end all, right? But I do know that in terms of my answer, some days I feel like I am, and some days I feel like I'm not, right? Because some days I get up and I'm like, I love me, and there's nothing that nobody's gonna say different about that. But some days I get up like, oh my God, like what am I going through, right? And it's those days that I feel like, you know, I want a lifetime partner that is willing to fight with me into the end, and not necessarily a court marriage, so to speak. And there are days where I question if I'm in that, and sometimes that comes up, and it's like these are experiences and proof that this is going to be a good long-term experience for me, and I'm learning a lot about myself in it. But I don't know if I don't know if I'm ready, because I don't know if I will ever know, right, if I'm ready.
The answer to your question is yes, I'm ready. Well, the question is, are you ready? And I say yes. And, you know, do I want to be in one? No. So I think that, you know, it used to be sort of like, you know, concern about like commitment issues and all of that. I've been committed to my barber for over 15 years now. So I know that I have commitment. I know that that's there. You know, I know I have some of that.
And we've been friends for a very long time.
For a very long time.
Yes.
Right.
Years.
It faltered sometimes.
A little bit.
No, we ain't never faltered. Not
Definitely
once.
your
That's
fault.
about it. Anyway, this is yeah. So anyway, the answer is yes.
These conversations are truly therapeutic. They're healing. They're all the things. And this is really, truly the reason why I want to have them, for everything that you guys named. And I'm going to try to go back and name them all again. But truly, that's the purpose behind it. So I thank you so much. And before we go, please make sure that you guys like, comment, share, and subscribe. It is the button there. It says subscribe. There's a bell. Tell them, subscribe. Subscribe! We'll see you next time. Thank